Hi, everybody. It's Eamon here from the Pat Monk Presents podcast. Today, we have a special guest joining us all the way from the UK. It's Oliver from TerminusDB. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So for those who are tuning in, obviously we have a global audience here, but those who are tuning in that maybe haven't heard of TerminusDB, can you give us a little bit of a download or an overview of how you help people and businesses and so forth?
Yeah, sure. Well, we essentially we are a database company. We have an open source document graph database. We've recently launched a product called Terminus CMS, which is a headless content management system. It's primarily aimed at developers who are looking for a solution to make data and content across the organization discoverable and usable. It's headless, which means it's decoupled from the presentation layer. So it's used to create almost like a content infrastructure for an array of front ends. So from mobile applications to management dashboards through to back office applications, and giving data scientists access to content and data so they can use AI train AI with your internal information, which obviously is quite prevalent with all the AI chat out there at the moment. It's unlike other CMS platforms that aim to cater for brochure websites and e-commerce platforms. It's more aimed at complex environments. So if you think manufacturing, where they have very complicated supply chains with lots of components, lots of products, lots of different stakeholders all over the world, and understanding that is incredibly difficult. And this can obviously cause all sorts of issues. It has a number of features that make it unique for these complex environments. So number one, it's got a collaboration module, which essentially at the database layer, it allows some of the things more synonymous with software development through GitHub. So at the database level, you can like branch your database. So you can take a copy, work on it, make changes away from anything that's live. And you can either give that copy to someone else to look at, or you can merge it back in. And this lets people work together to create content, to create documentation, to create dashboards, kind of at the same time. But the other feature really helps get these complex operations understandable, usable, discoverable, is that underneath the hood, it's a knowledge graph, a graph database. And this essentially is, it stores not only the data or the content, but also the relationships between things. So if you look at knowledge graphs in the real world example, so the likes of Google and Facebook, they wouldn't have enjoyed the success that they have today without knowledge graphs, because like, for instance, Facebook, they use knowledge graphs to understand your friends, behaviors, and like tailor messaging to you. And that's kind of the same premise, but for internal content, internal data, to bridge those silos between departments and create real meaning from large organizations, information that they have dotted around in 1,000,001 different applications.
Exactly. And speaking of information getting out there, I believe that you're at the Knowledge Graph conference in New York later in the year. So you're doing business internationally as well.
That's correct. Yes, we were there last year as well, and our co-founder and CTO Gavin Mendel-Gleeson will be there. He's presenting the concept of knowledge graphs in the content field there. So that should be interesting. I did the presentation last year, so it will be much better this year because Gavin knows what he's talking about. It's good. It's a great event, and there's some amazing speakers there. So we're proud to be part of it.
Great. And like, how else besides the conference are you getting the word out there? I mean, are you using like LinkedIn or Google or advertising, or, how important, for example, is the website to turning maybe potential visitors into future business clients?
Yeah, well, the website's very important because it has a number of functions, really. It's the discovery, So yeah, finding out a little bit, because we're not a well-known brand. So we are in certain circles, like for example, the knowledge graph world, where it's quite niche, but we're fairly well known there. But like in the wider tech space, probably not as well known. So yeah, the website for discovery, but also the educational side of it. So through blogs and our documentation, and then through to the call to action. So people actually signing up for Terminus CMS, they can do it via the website, sign up for the freemium account and have a play, clone some of the projects, example projects that we've got, and just kind of have a play with it, experiment and see the capabilities. Yeah, and we use a lot of because we're very technically focused. Our audience is mainly developers, so we like Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, but also like developer forums. So like Hacker News is massive. I mean, it's very competitive. It's run by the venture capitalists, Y Combinator. And yeah, if you get on the front page of there, it generates like 5,000 extra visitors like a day from just being on the front page. But again, it's not as easy as just putting a piece of content out there and bam, we're on the front page. But it can have some really good impact.
Great. And like with this and what you're sharing, I mean, what specific industries are you growing in, or are you focused on at the moment?
Yeah, well, this is a tricky one for us, because essentially we'd fit in to any large organization, because the bigger your organization, you have more teams, more processes, more applications. It becomes complex and it's difficult to manage. But for our own sanity, we've narrowed it down to 3 target industries that we're primarily focusing on. So first, that I've already touched upon, is manufacturing. So those with complex supply chains. So what happens is that they have forecasts. So they sales forecasts. So they kind of fine tune their manufacturing, because if your manufacturing processes aren't efficient, you're bleeding a lot of money out of your company. But forecasts are subject to external influences. So like material scarcities, shipping issues, consumer confidence, which is a big issue at the moment because of all the doom and gloom around. Yeah, and this can have very negative effects. So making the supply chain more transparent with a knowledge graph, with this content and data, and making it usable so people can see it and use it and act upon it to keep the manufacturing processes as efficient as possible is one of the areas. Also compliance, so industries that are very heavily regulated, like financial services, pharmaceutical companies, they spend vast amount of time and money fulfilling their compliance and regulatory requirements. And this again is documentation, it's content, it's data, and being able to say, right, well, show me what these particular tests were for a particular drug in 2017. Our collaboration model kind of allows time travel. So you can go back, you can take a copy of that data and say, here you go, regulator, here's the information you need. So again, dramatically reducing the time and costs. And then finally, professional services, where the documentation is complex and has certain legal requirements towards it. So for example, an insurance company would sell a policy, but they need to ensure they're not mis-selling a policy, because that can cause them all sorts of issues. So if I'm a 25-year-old, I wish, and I'm filling out a form and I want a midlife policy, but I can't have that because I'm too young. So our database basically has constraints in the data layer, so it protects the company. So if you've got a website with a form, they don't have to worry about applying any sort of constraints to this form. It'll be done in the back end. So it's extra security, and it helps with the claims process and various things like that. So that's kind of the areas we're operating in at the moment.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you're a busy guy.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite busy.
Yeah, a lot going on, a lot going on. So look, now that like you shared definitely a lot, now that we're coming up towards the end of our interview, I wanted maybe, if it's okay with you, maybe jump into some quick fire questions. So short answers, all we need here. So are you ready, Oliver?
Yes, but
You're in the
I'm
hot
ready.
you're in the hot seat now. You're in the hot seat. So what was the last book you read, or maybe the current book you're reading?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I haven't read anything for a while, actually. I've recently written a book, and like since finishing it, I've stopped reading. I'm currently reading Zero, I believe it's called. It's a sci-fi book. I am into my sci-fi, so yes,
Very
I am
good.
actually reading that. But yeah, I'll get back onto it next week when I'm on holiday.
Very good. Well, enjoy. And also, with everything that's happening at the moment, I mean, if you're like in what you do on a day-to-day basis, if you could snap your fingers and have like say something that's taking up a lot of time or a repetitive task, I mean, if you could automate something, what would that be? And there is no limitations.
Ooh, ChatGPT's doing a lot of that for me. Probably SEO side of things, like link building, internal links, like kind of that sort of thing. It gets a bit monotonous. Keyword research as well is not the most exciting task, but important nonetheless.
Oh, of course. No, that makes sense. And also, I mean, imagine it's your very first day at TerminusDB again. You're starting all over again, your first day, week, month. What advice would you give yourself if you were to start all over again? Or what would you do differently?
I think more primary research, talk to more customers, talk to more prospects, understand problems better, and also probably more testing as well with campaigns, more A/B testing. Us marketers are busy people, and you kind of move on to the next task, but really you should be testing to improve your results for the next task.
Exactly. No, testing is key, definitely key. So, look, what I want to say is, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I want to give you the last word. So, imagine if someone forgets everything that we just spoke about, and you wanted to leave them with one short, crisp point about Terminus DB. What would that be?
It would be Terminus DB is content infrastructure for the connected world.
Perfect. Well, you heard it here. Best of luck at the KnowledgeCraft conference in the US, in New York. I believe it's in May, I believe.
That's right. I can't remember the exact dates, but it's in May at some time.
It's sometimes in May. So, like, if you're in the New York area, maybe pop in and see the guys. So, look, that is it for today's episode. Looking forward to seeing everybody in the next one. And thanks again, Oliver. All the best.
Thanks very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.